Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining me in this virtual session that is part of Singapore Garden Festival Hort Show 2021. My name is Tamako, and I'm from NParks. Today, I will be talking about begonias and African violets that are two popular flowering plants. And begonias and African violets are very popular globally, including in Singapore. So in this session, I'll be talking about overview of begonias and African violet, including their types as well as growing conditions. Then I will demonstrate on potting and propagation by cutting as well as stem cuttings. Then lastly, I will answer the questions by the audience. So before I go straight to the introduction of begonias and African violets, let me touch on the background of how collecting plants and gardening have become so popular over time. Even though the plant shops are plenty today, the collecting and growing plants wasn't this popular. So the trend of appreciating plants as an ornamentals can be traced back to 17th century. But it was really the Victorian era when the people became crazy about collecting plants such as ferns, orchids, and even seaweed. Why? Because Victorian era was when the Industrial Revolution had begun, and it mechanized that what was previously done by people laboriously. So people could have additional time, and they could pursue hobby to grow plants during the day. And they have grown the plants. So that's first thing to note. And notice the picture of the fern displayed in glass cases. These glass cases are called Wardian cases, and it was early type of terrarium. Wardian case made it possible to bring plants alive from faraway land to England. Because it was possible, the plants and the environment inside the glass case were protected from undesirable factors such as salt particles, extreme temperature, and eaten by rats or insects during the long sea journey back to England. So the invention of Wardian case revolutionized the private plant ownership. So until then, people had to go to botanic garden to see those exotic plants and the conservatory. But with this, even working class people with no garden and little money could own their own plants and enjoy growing it in the case. So collecting plants from far-flung area across the globe became talk of the town. If they had Instagrams or TikToks, I can imagine those people would post like photos, videos of themselves holding exotic plants or orchids or ferns, maybe from here, to get many likes. So gardening is also highly therapeutic, as you know. And so collecting the plants and spending time to take care of them, touted as healthy activity for adults and children, and it remained that way even today, right? So begonias and African violets are in trend for a long time. They have been popular among those plant collections. Why? Because I think they are not susceptible to disease and pests so much, and it's relatively easy to maintain if you get the right conditions. And they also tend to stay neatly. It doesn't go out of control. And these features are preferred by those collectors. That's why they stay popular among the collectors. So let me share more about these forever popular plants. First, begonias. Okay. So begonias belong to the plant family Begoniaceae. And Begoniaceae is one of the largest flowering plant families with about 2,000 natural species. They mainly occur in Central and South Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, which is the south region of Saharan Desert, as well as tropical Asia, where we are. And begonias' habitat is diverse. They are often found beneath the tree canopies where they receive filtered light through the foliage of surrounding taller trees. They love deeply shaded forest understory, and some species, although they have adapted to drier climate, and they can be found on the rock formations at mountain tops. Well, in Borneo, there are about 200 recorded species, and in Malaysia, Peninsular Malaysia alone, there are 50 known species. But unfortunately, there are no species native to Singapore. Well, anyway, if you're interested to find more about the begonias of Peninsular Malaysia, you can check out information in this book. Okay. But commercially, there are more than 15,000 hybrids of begonias sold in the market, and the range of begonia flowers, foliage, its color and size are incredibly diverse. Well, some hybrids have these massive flamboyant flowers, while the other hybrids are created for their varied and amazing, almost artificial-looking foliage. And foliage, they have patterns. I've seen the colors with striking bright pink stripes, or the foliage with polka dots in white or pinks, and some have these escargot patterns, which is really amazing. And shape-wise, I've seen there are angel wing shaped foliage and maple leaf shape, or even some of the begonias have fern front. Yes, this one, the fern leaf shape, which is so it's really diverse plant forms, right? Well, the begonias are mostly herbaceous plants with soft succulent stems and shallow roots. And distinct feature of begonias is that the leaves tend to be asymmetrical. And begonias can be classified into three groups based on their rootstock. It's tuberous, fibrous, and rhizomatous. The one on the left is called Rex begonia, which has a rhizomatous roots. And Rex begonias are known for its attractive, colorful patterned leaves. And one is in the middle is Semper Florence begonias, and it has fibrous roots. So Semper Florence means always flowering, and as the name suggests, they produce abundance of flowers that come in red, pink, and white. And the third one is Elatio Begonias, they have tuberous roots, and they have these showy flowers resembling other flowers like carnations and roses. Yeah. So now let's look at the samples here. So first, this one here. Well, this begonia, you can see the upright stems. So they have cane. And as you have guessed, it's called cane begonias, right? And cane begonias belong to the fibrous roots group. Okay. And next one here. Oh, yeah, on the screen, you see the more cane begonias. Yeah. Then the next one here is Rex begonias. So Rex begonias are most common begonias among the three groups that I mentioned now. They have interesting patterns and colors, as you can see here. So take a closer look at this plant. So you can see like metallic texture with the hues of like bright red, this one. And I can see the different hues of green, light green and dark green, and even dark brown colors, right? And some of the hybrids have the foliage sprinkled with sparkles. Yeah, so it's very understandable why they are so popular among those collectors. Well, for these Rex begonias, flower is usually a secondary feature. Because of these striking foliage, people buy them for the foliage and not so much for the flowers. And they belong to the rhizomatous group, so they have rhizomes, but it's quite difficult to show on this plant. So let me show you an example over here. Okay, this one here is Rhizomatous Begonia, and you can clearly see the rhizome creeping on the soil surface, right? And check out these marks line up along the stem. So these marks are created by leaf stalks. As the plant grows, they drop the older leaves, leaving these leaf scars. So it's quite cool, right? And it would be interesting to plant Rhizomatous Begonias in bonsai style to exhibit this feature more prominently. Oh yeah, and then the Rhizomatous Begonias is a slow grower, and it takes long time to grow into a bigger plant. So for this plant here, I can imagine that it is more than maybe 10 years old, at least. Yes. Okay, go back to the next example. So this one is Elatio Begonias. They are cross between tuberous begonias and Semper Florence that I mentioned earlier, and they can flower generously if the conditions are right. Otherwise, they have a very short lifespan in Singapore climate because they prefer cooler temperatures, and they would do better in an air-conditioned environment. But they are lovely with all these flowers when in full bloom. Especially, it creates magnificent table displays, and it's good for festive occasions with these bright, chili-colored flowers that come in pink, orange, red, yellow, and so on. Right? And then they have tuberous roots. Yes. So another interesting feature of begonias is that they are monoecious plants, which means they develop separate male and female flowers in one plant. And if the pollination is successful, the female flower will form a winged capsule containing very tiny seeds in it. But this is rather rare for the homegrown begonias, and even if you manage to collect some seeds from your plant, it would take a very long time to grow a big plant from a tiny seed. Another lesser-known fact is that begonia flowers are edible. Yeah, so they have subtle sweet to sour taste. So you can use its petal to garnish your dishes to make them look pretty. And begonias, they are shade-loving plants, and they are suitable for indoor. Great to grow in offices. So I used to grow in my office because my workstation was just by the window and I had access to bright light. So I just placed 2 or 3 pots on my desk and enjoyed them growing happily. And it wasn't that difficult to look after the plants. I just sprayed water every now and then and gave a fertilizer if I remembered. And they were happy being left alone even I forget to water sometimes because they can take slightly drier conditions. Well, the important thing is that you need to plant begonias in well-drained soil and then avoid overwatering and let the soil dry a bit between watering. Begonias have these thick rhizomes or tuberous stems, so they can retain some moisture in themselves. Yeah. Well, now let's talk about African violets. So the African violets, are they from Africa? Well, the answer to this question is yes, they are from Africa, and they are native to actually Tanzania and southeastern Kenya. So these 2 countries are also located within the equatorial belt, so you can sort of imagine that their climate is more or less similar to what we have here in our region. So how are African violets related to violets? Well, they are not. They are not closely related. Violets are from plant family Violaceae, and African violets are from the plant family Gesneriaceae. But it's called so because their flowers resemble to true violets. And if you have been searching online about African violets, you encounter the term Saint Paulia keeps coming up. Saint Paulia is referring to the genus that African violets belong to. As a little bit talk about the taxonomy, but recent study has shown that the African violet belongs to another genus called Streptocarpus. However, commercially, it is still widely known as Saint Paulia, and indeed, in Japan, where I'm from, they are called as Saint Paulia. We are calling so, yes. And on the screen, you see the other common gesnerias that are commercially available. So one in the left is flame violet, or Epicea capreata cultivars, and Gloxinia, or Siningia speciosa cultivars. So flame violets are sought after for their colorful leaves, while the Gloxinias, on the other hand, they are valued for its large and showy flowers. Although African violets are not native to Singapore, we do have some native gesneriad species. Yeah. So two examples. One on the right is Esquinensis pulcher, or lipstick plant. As you can see, a bright red bud emerging from this dark maroon tubular structure called calyx. It just looked like a lipstick, especially so before flower is open. Yeah. And then the other one is called Codonoboea platypus. It has unbranched stem that can grow up to 1 meter and produce this trumpet-shaped white flower. Well, the begonias are mainly admired for their foliage. African violets are sought after for their flowers. They are hybridized to produce flowers in various colors, like purple, blue, maroon, pink, and white. And some hybrids have these double petals or frilled edges. So African violets, they can be broadly categorized into two types based on their growth form. One is rosette form and trailing form. So rosette African violet has a short main stem and short internode. So leaves grow in layered circular pattern from the main stem, and flowers are packed in the center of the rosette. So a mature plant can have many layers of leaves with the crown of flowers in the center. This one is trailing African violets. They have sprawling growth habit, and they have long main stem with long internode. So their side shoots growing into the branching stem, which gives a plant a trailing appearance. So let me share more about their growing conditions. So African violets prefer a condition like us humans find it conducive. They like a bright area with no strong or direct sunlight, and they prefer cooler temperature. We like aircon, and they don't really like high humidity. So these characteristics make the African violet ideal plants for most offices. And in terms of watering, well, you need to water thoroughly, but allow the soil drying in between watering, like begonias. So overwatering can kill plant as their stems tend to soften and rot. And another important thing is that the leaves don't like to get wet. So when you water, try not to spray on the leaf. Yeah. Well, actually, it is best to water African violet from underneath. So meaning by letting the water seep through the drainage hole at the bottom of the pot. Why don't I show how to bathe African violet? So here is a bowl of water. And you take the African violet pot and bring down in the water. Oops, sorry. Yeah. Then you can see the water rising from the drainage hole. And once it's thoroughly watered, you can lift it and drain excess water like this. just like that. It's easy, right? But I understand some people find it too troublesome to do this. So in that case, you can water from the above, but like I said, you need to prevent water splashing over the leaf. So you do lightly push the leaves away, gently, then make the space to pour water like this from the side, right? You use your hand as a shield, okay? Yeah. Okay. So now the leaves of African violets are fragile and brittle, so you can easily break off from the plant, but it's okay. If you happen to accidentally break a healthy leaf, you may want to use it for the leaf propagation. Yeah. And I mentioned earlier about the origin of African violets. They come from this small region of Tanzania and southeast coast Kenya. And their habitat area is already small, and it's been distracted by deforestation some more for settlement or for farming. But so even though African violets are very popular household plants, their wild species are sadly facing extinction due to habitat loss. Well, let's move on to the demonstration. Let me prepare some materials. Okay, so first, I will show you repotting of African violets. You may want to do this repotting when your plant outgrows its pot. Right? So what you need here is first, okay, potted plants, and a good sized pot with drainage holes, right? Well, if you want to make the plant bigger, then you may want to choose the one size bigger pot. But otherwise, if you want to retain the same size, you can plant it back to the same pot. And a pair of chopsticks. Then a very well-drained planting mix. So this one here is the potting mix that you can easily get from nursery, but quite often they are peat-based and it may be too wet for African violets. So what I'm going to do is add some perlite to make it more porous so the drainage can be improved, okay? Just like this. And you mix it well. Yeah, you mix it until homogeneously mixed. Okay, and now you take the pot. Oh, and then you need a nylon netting. So you can buy nylon netting from nursery, but I suggest if you buy like garlics or onions from supermarket, you can recycle them, just fine. And it is another small effort towards the waste reducing. Okay. So nylon netting, and then a pair of secateurs or scissors, sterilized and sharp, the sharp blades, yes. And the scoop. Okay, so prepare all these required items before you start planting. The reason being, you're going to take out the plant from pot, right? And then if you let it stand in the air, the roots can get dried, and you don't want that. So yes, make sure you have everything before you start. Okay, first, place the nylon layer netting at the bottom of the pot. This is to prevent the soil to escape from the drainage hole below, okay? So if you lay like this. And then you fill the pot with planting soil up to 1/3 or half of the pot. Okay, almost gauge. Okay. Excuse me. And you put this aside. Now, oops, sorry. You will remove the plant from the pot. To do so, you give a squeeze. You give a good massage to the plant, I mean the plastic pot. This is to create a space between pot and the root ball, so it will make it easy to remove the plant. And after you give a squeeze, then you put your hand at the base of the plant and gently slide the pot to take out the plant. So here you have the root ball, right? And now, okay. Now you want to remove the soil from the plant using the chopstick. And you remove as much as you can. This is because you want to remove any undesired elements such as pest or weed seed. Yeah, and then plants will be happier in the new potting mix. Try to remove. And actually, by the way, it is easier to do remove soil from the plant when it's drier. So I suggest to do before watering. Yeah. Some more. Yeah, so it takes time. Well, if you don't have chopsticks or you don't know how to use chopsticks, you can use tweezers. That's perfectly fine. Yeah. And now you can see the fine root system here. So this plant is actually not so bad. But if your plant's roots has grown very long, you can cut with sharp sterilized scissors up to like half of its length. The reason being, you want the roots to grow straight downward, and if the roots is too long, it gets tangled in the bottom of the pot. So yeah, you can cut, no problem. And then, if there are leaves, weakly attached or broken leaves or diseased leaves, you can remove from the plant. But it is important to remove from the base of leaf stalk because, after you remove the leaf stalks, right, that's where the new roots will start to grow in the soil mix. So make sure, and if any bits are left on the main stem, the roots cannot grow. So make sure you use your fingernail to clear any bits from the main stem. And and if you have flower heads, also remove from the plant. Well, you might feel very sorry for the plant, because it's being transplanted, you want the plant to channel its energy towards the rooting rather than flowering. Flowering takes a lot of energy, so if you see any flowers, remove from the plant. Okay. Okay. So once your plant is ready to pot, you can transplant into a new pot. Okay, here. So you hold the plant like this and fill the pot with planting soil mix. Oh, actually, I'm going to use hand, easier. And try not to fill the pot all the way up to the top of the pot, and you can slightly plant deeper. The reason being, the roots will start to grow from where the leaves are removed. Those, unwanted leaves are removed. So you can plant slightly deeper. And tap it to settle the plant. You can see I left the space. You fill up the pot up to the brim. And what I usually do is use 4 fingers and poke a hole and tap it. This should give a good contact between potting mix and the root system. Yeah? So now the plant is potted, but it's not complete. Remember, every time you repot, you need to water. So I'll put this away. Take the bowl of water again and let it water, seep from the bottom. And the water will seep through from the drainage hole at the bottom of the pot all the way until top. Well, you can let it sit for a while until the soil gets wet. It takes a while, but yeah. So when the planting media is very dry, it is difficult to re-wet it. So it may be a good idea to slightly moisten the soil before you start repotting. Okay. Yeah, now I can feel the moisture, the soil's being moist. Yeah. Then you lift it, drain the excess water. Oops. Yeah, it's okay. Now, repotting is complete. So you place it in bright area and try not to disturb at least 2 weeks. And you can re-water it when the soil is a little bit drier. So how to check for the timing for watering? Well, what you can do is just use your finger and touch the soil surface. And if the soil particles sticks on your finger like this, it means that there are enough moisture in the planting mix. So you wait a little bit longer. When nothing sticks on your finger, then that's the time for watering, and give a good drink of water to the plant. Okay? And you can place these in a bright area, in a cooler temperature, so maybe away from the direct sunlight. So that if your office has aircon, that is great. And this kind of light setting is also quite okay, quite good to grow for flowers. And once the flower starts to grow from center, or new leaves start to show, then you can start to fertilize it. You can give a liquid fertilizer when you give water. Or my colleague who grows African violets and the begonias in nursery shared with me that Osmocote is just fine. Well, Osmocote is slow-released fertilizer. As its name suggests, it releases the nutrients slowly. So the dissolved nutrients will be dissolved in water for the roots to uptake. Right? For slow-release fertilizer, you can just give like maybe once a month is good enough. But liquid fertilizer, if the flowering is occurring, then you can give maybe weekly. So that was repotting of African violets. Next, I will move on to propagation of begonia with stem cutting. Okay, so I can just leave here. Oops. Okay. So for stem cutting, it's good to do the stem cutting method for the cane begonias or the begonias which have clear stems. Yeah. What you need is the stem from a mother plant. When you take the stem from mother plant, remember to cut from the, let's say this is a mother plant. Remember to cut above the node, because if you leave a little bit of stub on the mother plant, it will just die back and becomes brown and unsightly. So when you take out from the mother plant, you cut above the node, right? And okay, so this is the stem that I have accidentally broke off earlier. So I'm just going to use this. So let's say this is a stem cutting. So what you do is cut below a node, right? Below a node, above, at the angle, below a node at an angle of 45 degrees, like this. This is to increase the area for rooting, the surface area of rooting, and also the small baby leaf will start to emerge from here. Okay? And you remove the lower leaves, like this, and remove any flower parts. Again, you don't want to channel the energy for flowering. Okay, so like this. And then here is the small pot filled with planting media. What I do is make a small hole and insert. And lightly compact to give a contact between soil and stem, okay? And again, water it. Well, I can water this from the bottom again. Okay, let it stand. So this is a direct soil method, but you can also propagate by the water culture. So here is the example of stem cutting, rooted stem cutting that is done by my aforementioned my colleague. So you can see the roots growing in the glass. Can you see? Yeah. So it's well developed. So what she did is, like, when she pruned the stems from the cane begonias, she just inserted the cut stems in water and left it, and they developed roots. Let me just take one example. Yeah, this one here. So because they are left in water for quite some time, the roots have developed, but also developed a small shoot. You can see the baby shoot growing like this. Yeah, so it's definitely ready for potting. Okay. I can pot this one as well. Because the new plants are starting from here, I'm gonna just cut away the top part. And then plant the rooted part, make a hole in the planting media. Don't bury the leaves, only the roots. Yeah. And then water it. Okay. Yeah, this one can propagate another one. So that was propagation with stem cutting. And next I want to show the leaf cutting propagation. So I mentioned that if you happen to break a leaf from African violet, the healthy leaves, you can use for propagation. What you need to do is, use the sharp scissors or secateurs. You cut the base of leaf stalk at an angle slanted towards the leaf surface, like this. Then you insert in water. Okay, but okay, this may be okay. Never mind. I can use a smaller container because only the tip of leaf stalk should be in water, and not the leaf blade. Yeah, like this. And yeah, very easy, right? And you can do same for the begonia leaf. Because the Rhizomatous Begonias, you don't want to really cut the rhizomes. So you can propagate by the leaf cutting, do the same thing. Cut it at an angle, slant it up, then dip in water. The tip of the leaf stalk should be in water like this. I mean, there are multiple ways of doing leaf propagation, but this is the simplest way to do. Basically, what you need is a leaf and water and clear container. And if the tip of the stalk rots away, you can just snip it off and start as a fresh leaf cutting. Easy, right? And then the success rate is quite good. Yeah. But important thing is you just don't disturb them, because more you disturb, more it takes longer for the root formation. So maybe if you leave it for 2 weeks or so, you should start to be able to see the small roots starting to grow. However, I understand, NEA will scold me. We have to be very mindful for not creating the mosquito breeding site. So what you can do is take the cling film, cover it, use a satay stick and poke the hole, and insert the leaf stalk through the hole and touch water. Okay, sorry. Yeah, touch water. Sorry, I need a bit more water. But anyway, you get the idea. So by doing this, you don't have to worry about mosquito laying eggs in the water, and then you don't have to disturb them, and then place them in bright area, away from direct sunlight. Yes, and then you should be able to start new plant. Other thing I wanted to mention is that, so you can start a new cuttings, and for some reason, if you don't want any water around you, right? Not to worry, you can grow with Sphagnum Moss. Yes. So here's a Sphagnum Moss. Well, Sphagnum Moss you can buy from nursery. It's sold like this in dry form usually. Yeah, dry form. And what you need to do is, okay, this one is I think quite enough. What you need to do is soak in water like this, and let the Sphagnum Moss absorb water. And you squeeze it like this to drain excess water. You just need the Sphagnum Moss to moisture enough, not too soggy, because that will rot the leaf stalk stem, right? And put on a tray, lay like this. So moist Sphagnum Moss. My colleague, aforementioned colleague, also shared with me that Sphagnum Moss also quite works fine. Yeah. Then you take the leaf cuttings and lay like this. Yeah. Like this. It's easy, right? And for Sphagnum Moss, unlike the clear glass container, you cannot see the roots. But try not to disturb maybe for 2 weeks. And if you want to check, you can gently push the Sphagnum Moss to see if the roots have started to grow. Yep. So, so this is when you accidentally break off a leaf from African violet. But if you were to deliberately remove, want to take a leaf from the African violet plant, then take from the second or third layer of the plant. What I mean is, like, Okay, so the new shoots start to grow from the center. So that's newer shoots. Then the second layer is second old leaves, and third layer is third old leaf, and the outermost layers is the oldest leaves, and then start to die first. So the second or third layers leaf is more mature, and it's not gonna it doesn't take longer time as much as older leaf. So if I were to take from here, I would take maybe this leaf, but I won't leave it now, but maybe this leaf or this leaf, healthy looking leaf, yeah, that have higher chance to grow. Yeah. I hope you can understand what I meant. Anyway, so that was the demonstration. Thank you. Now, the last part of the session. Let's see what questions the audience have. Yeah. Let's see. Oh, sorry. Oh, okay. How to get my African violet bloom again? Okay, so African violet bloom again. So if you place in the cool air conditions, and you give a fertilizer. So fertilizer-wise, the normal NPK fertilizer is just fine. But because you want to encourage blooming, you choose the fertilizer which is high in phosphorus, which is the middle number. You see the three numbers, the higher number in the middle. That's high in phosphorus. So you choose the fertilizer and then give the fertilizer maybe, if it's flowering, you can give every 2 weeks. But if it's osmocote, like slow released fertilizer, they release nutrients slowly. So maybe you can give once a month, but you can follow the instruction on the labels. But I would say give less than more, because less will not kill plants. But if you give too much, you can cause a fertilizer burn, like watering. Like overwatering can kill plants easily, but if you give less water, it doesn't kill plants. So try from the lower dosage. Okay. How do I propagate begonias and African violets from leaves? Well, I hope I showed just now, and then hopefully you can succeed doing the same method as I did. Okay. Okay. Is it from? Sorry. Okay. Can African violet be grown using garden potting soil mixed with perlite? Does that mean growing using garden potting soil? Is it like taking the soil from the garden? Not recommended, because there might be some pests or disease. You may want to use a fresh potting mix, freshly bought from nursery, and the mix with perlite. Yes, but alternatively, you can buy those soil mix specially blended for African violets. Yeah. Sure. Okay. Can the old soil be reused? Yeah, I like recycling, the spirit. But if you're worried about there is a pest and disease or something, then it's always recommended to use the fresh potting mix. Yeah. Can I trim begonia to foster its growth and make flowering easier? Trim the begonia to foster its growth and make flowering easier. Okay. So sorry, I'm not sure about the foster it, but you mean the trimming of begonias? Yes, you can trim the begonias, but I don't think it encourages flowering because you want the flowering shoot, right? So I have another question. Why do my begonias have brown edges? Yeah, I think it's referring to the Rex begonias, which prefer slightly damp, moist conditions. Usually the case is the stress sign from the lack of humidity around the plant. So what you can do is you can put more plants around your begonia plant to increase humidity. But if you don't have space to put more plants, what I can suggest is to place your begonia in a nice sized glass container and put some sphagnum moss around the pot base to increase the humidity around the plant. Not the covered container, but open container, because you want to keep the ventilation of ventilation still, natural ventilation. And if you use live sphagnum moss, it makes even more attractive indoor greenery because the live sphagnum moss has this lime green color. Yeah. And do begonia cuttings need rooting hormones? Well, begonias can root relatively easily, so not necessarily to dub in the rooting hormone. But if you have it, by all means, why don't use it? I mean, I don't see any problem using the rooting hormone to make the rooting faster. Yeah. Does begonia have any pest problems? Well, if you place begonias outdoor on the ground, yes, they can be attacked by snails and slugs, but basically what you need is you just remove manually, or my colleague who grows in nursery shared with me that you can place shattered eggshells, like broken pieces eggshells, and place around the pot edge, so when the slugs and the snails crawl to the pot, they don't like to touch any calcium. So yeah, that's one of the way to deter snails and slugs. But other than that, begonias and African violets don't have many pest problems. Yeah. Is terracotta better for growing African violets? Well, I think for any plants, right? For African violet, because you want to keep, they prefer drier condition, and terracotta can dry faster than plastic pot, because plastic pot, inside the plastic pot, it's difficult to get dry. So yeah, terracotta pot, I would think it would be easier to grow. Well, do we need to water the sphagnum moss during the 2 weeks of propagation? Well, there is no like fixed 2 weeks fixed time, but if your sphagnum moss feels drier, then yes, you can spray water to make it moist again, but try not to splash water over the African violet leaf, right? Why do flower stalks of African violet turn limp? Oh, because after flowering is completed, they are dying off, so you can remove those flowers, spent flowers, from the base. But if you mean if the flower just started and starting to limp, then maybe it could be due to overwatering. Yeah. Yes. So yeah, try not to overwater. That's the key. Usually, the most cases, African violets are killed by overwatering. Why the leaves turn yellow? It could be it could be many reasons. So yellowing leaves could be by overwatering again, or lack of water, or it could be lack of nutrients. So if the soil is too moist, it could be due to overwatering. Okay, leaf cuttings of African violets tend to rot. Oh, I see, okay. So maybe if you're growing from, if you put in water and then rot, maybe you may want to change water, but if it's kept in cooler conditions, then water, maybe bacteria growing in water, or if you're growing on the Sphagnum Moss, then maybe the Spagna Moss could be too soggy. So you don't want the Sphagnum Moss to be too soggy. Okay, the leaf cuttings of African violets tend to rot. Do the leaf cuttings need sunlight? Well, no need direct sunlight. Need to be placed under bright area, under fluorescent light is good enough. No need sunlight, yeah. It will cause a scorch on the leaf. Okay, so how often to water African violets? Like I said, when you feel the soil is dry, then that's the time for watering. Okay. Can we use this method of watering for other plants, or watering from the underneath? Yeah, you can, but it's more troublesome to lift the plant, when it's heavy. And then the other plant maybe not so much fussy about getting water splash over the leaves. So probably it's easier to water from the above, right? So, okay. Yeah, so that was the last question. And thank you so much for so many questions. And I hope I answered and interpreted correctly. Well, so that brings us to the end of the session. And hopefully today's sharing will spur your interest to grow these beautiful plants. And I honestly believe that having plants around you is good for your mind and soul. With that note, I'd like to thank you for tuning in, and I wish you success with your African violets and begonias. You can enter the competition next year. And have a great weekend. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.